Hey guys, this is part 2 of my Brio tutorial series. In part 1 we covered actors, NPCs, and character data. In part 2 we're going to be covering the camera movement and your environment. So as you can see, we are outside for this video. We are in Limsa Limits at the Aft Castle. We've got our buddy Ardbert with us again, but I am going to hide him for the time being using this hide button because we want to talk about the weather and the time of day. So we're going to go to this environment tab up here at the top. You can see we've got a few options here. We've got time, weather, festivals, and rendering. So let's go top to bottom and start with time. This is pretty self-explanatory. You've got the time of day, and if you go through this slider, obviously you can see that we are changing the time of day. You can also lock or unlock this. If you leave it unlocked, the time of day will progress naturally. Lock it, it will stay set to this time forever. You've also got the day of the month slider. This, as far as I'm aware, only affects the moon. So if you look up here at the moon and we change the time of day, you can see it affects how full the moon is, which is pretty neat. So the second thing that we're going to talk about is the weather. We're going to set this back to daytime so we can see what we're talking about. And under this weather tab, you can see we're currently set to clear skies. For Limsa Limita, we can have fair skies, a little more clouds. We can have all clouds. We can have fog. We can have rain. And we can have the snow. What you can also do is check this box here that says Show Invalid Weathers. This is going to show you all the types of weather from every environment in the game. Most of these are not going to do anything for you in Limsa Limita. Most of the time, they're just going to give you this kind of spooky, dark sky. But, you know, sometimes you can find some interesting effects in here if you want to play around with it. For the time being, I'm going to go back to fair skies. And we're going to close this tab. The next thing we're going to talk about is festivals. If you open up this tab, you're likely going to see a couple festivals that say unknown. These are probably things like the Road to 80 buff, things like that that are not going to affect our environment either way, so we can ignore those. What we're going to want to do is come down here to this search button, and this is going to show you every festival that has ever occurred in the game. So for an example, I'm going to load in All Saints Wake from 2021, and as you can see, this is going to load in the decorations from that event. You can also load in multiple festivals at once. So let's also load in Little Ladies Day. I need to zoom out a little bit here, but you can see that we've now got the decorations for both All Saints Wake and Little Ladies Day present at the same time. I thought that was kind of cool. Obviously, these festivals are not going to affect every area. I chose the Aft Castle because that tends to be where there are a lot of decorations that I can show you. But obviously, this is not going to put decorations in random places in the world. It's only going to put them where they would normally be during those festivals. So we're going to get rid of these, and I'm also going to show you that some festivals have effects that are dependent on the time of day and the weather. So I'm going to put in the Rising event from 2023. As you can see, we've got our decorations here, and those are great. If you look over in the distance here, we've just got plain sky. So I'm going to open the time tab back up and set this to dark. Now, you can see that we are getting the fireworks from this Rising event. So there's a lot you can play around with to find all the different decorations and effects. So I'm going to get rid of that. Bring this back to front here and set us back to daytime. The last thing we've got here in our environment section is rendering. The only thing that you have here is to freeze water. If you're somewhere where there is water, it will, move and sparkle naturally. You can check this box to freeze it. And that's really all that tab is for. So we're going to bring Ardbert back here so that we can start talking about our camera controls. Now, there's a lot of vanilla camera controls within this vanilla window here, but I don't ever really play with those because those are all also functions within the Brio window. So the first thing that you see here under this camera tab is your offset. You can see that this moves the camera either left to right, up and down, or forward and back. If you don't like what you've done to the camera, you can also reset this back to the default position. You've also got your rotation. You can twist your camera around. You can also do this with the Q and E keys on your keyboard. I hit these by accident all the time, so once again, we can reset. The next thing is your zoom, which you can obviously do with your scroll wheel. But if you play with this slider, this is the maximum I seem to be able to zoom in with my scroll wheel, but you can also zoom in a little closer with these buttons. And again, you can reset. Your field of view is a little tricky to explain, but if I zoom out all the way with this field of view, you can see it gives me a sort of stretched effect rather than zooming out. This can give you some better angles and try to fit more content on the screen without clipping into other objects that are in your way. I'm going to reset that again. And then you also have your pan function. You can pan using the WASD keys as well. You will eventually hit a wall where you can't pan with the keys anymore. You can continue to pan with these sliders. This is a little different from the offset, where this is sort of turning the camera in a circle rather than offset, moving your camera in a line. You also can go up and down with the angle. This can be done with your left click. You can tilt up and down this way, and you can see it's affecting these numbers. You can also just drag these for the same effect. So we're going to reset all that. You also have these buttons here where you can disable collision. This way you can sink into walls and floors, and you can actually find a couple of interesting locations doing this without giving away any spoilers. If you are into Shadowbringers, I recommend going inside the ocular and playing around with these buttons to sink into the walls. You might be surprised at what you find in there. And then our last checkbox here is the delimit camera button. This is basically just turning off any limits that are imposed on your camera. So if I keep these limits on, I can only zoom out about this far. If I delimit the camera, I can zoom out all the way. And even if I hide Ardbert here, I can keep going and going and going until I have a huge bird's eye view of what's stuff. Now, the last thing I want to discuss just really briefly is Gposing locations. Now, of course, you can Gpose anywhere in the outside world. You can Gpose in a player house, either yours or any other that are open. I don't recommend Gposing in people's houses without their permission, but technically you can. And my favorite thing to do is to Gpose within dungeons using the Explorer mode function. Unfortunately, you can't do this with trials, but if you set up Explorer mode in any dungeon, you can Gpose within it, which is pretty neat. There are also Gpose studios, which are player-made houses that are set up specifically for people to Gpose in. There are a lot of these throughout all the different data centers. There is a Discord server called Sites of Eorzea that has a list of all these great places to Gpose, whether that be in-world locations or the aforementioned Gpose studios. That will come up if you Google Sites of Eorzea Discord, and I will also put an invite link in the description. That should cover the environment and camera control section of my Brio tutorial. Again, if you guys have any questions, if I missed anything, if there's anything that you would like to see me touch on in the future, just let me know in the comments, and I'm always happy to help you guys out. Stay tuned for the next part, which will finally be all about posing. Thanks for watching.